talking about suicide assist, right? That was already available in Canada.
Correct.
But now they've kind of amended the bill. And do you want to explain what they've done?
So essentially, I'll give you just a quick rundown of the legislation. In 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada necessitated the changes in the criminal code to allow medical assisted suicide, essentially. Okay. So then in 2016, Parliament passed legislation enabling eligible adults to request this type of service, right?
Yep.
Then 2020 came. Bill C7 proposed further changes. And this was informed by public consultation. So this is when medical assisted suicide was being started to be considered for people with long-term mental illness.
So sorry. So prior to that, who was it considered for?
Anybody with terminal illness, so cancers.
Okay. So they knew that.
Yeah. So it's kind of an unforeseeable future for them at that point, and they didn't want to go through the agony.
Which makes sense.
Yeah,
they know they're going to die, and they're in a lot of pain and grief, and they don't want to put their family through it.
It's a physical. Their body's physically going, right. They don't want to watch their body deteriorate.
I think it's a lot more than that. I think a lot of people who decide on that are people who are not. They don't want to put their family members through it, right? I think it's the agony and the pain and the suffering and.
It is.
Right. So it can definitely be, as much as it is, of course, extremely painful for the individual, a lot of people tend to forget about who else that affects.
Well, 100%. Right? I mean, even when my mom got sick with cancer, she, one of the things she asked me, she said, I don't want this to drag out. And if it drags out, I need you to put something in my tea is what she said. But it was just her funny way of being I'm giving you permission because I don't know what to do here. And I don't want to watch you have to watch me.
Yeah.
So I can completely understand that.
So now they've changed the law that's no longer accessible for people who are terminally ill. It is now going to be available to people who are mentally ill.
Correct. And so essentially in 2023, it became live that individuals with mental illness are going to be considered eligible for medical assisted suicide and dying. However, that was March 17th, 2023. But later on in the year, this exclusion was extended until March 17th, 2024 to allow more time for developing resources and considering reports on these complex made requests. So figuring out if they're going to do it on a form submission basis like they do with the terminal illness, or if they're going to be doing it on a case-by-case basis.
So, my question would be, you're saying that they're allowing people who have a mental condition.
Correct.
But let's say if, some individual got into a car accident and became a paraplegic, but is fully functional mentally, would they be allowed?
So one of the eligibility, which I couldn't find much more further detail on this, but that's one of the eligibilities, you have to have decision-making capacity. So as long as you're 18 years older and you have decision-making capacity for yourself, you can apply for MAID, is what they call it.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, my question would be, is that basically just open to anyone and everyone? If someone just
would have to be that's where it comes an issue, because you can't, just because you have a mental illness, you can't go and kill yourself. You would have to be mentally ill and hurt somebody, or there'd have to be
there has to be
there's that you've gone
correct.
to get yourself.
So you do have to be be eligible for public funded healthcare in order to apply. You have to voluntarily request without external pressure. You have to provide informed consent after receiving the necessary information. And it has to be an serious incurable disease or a disability, excluding mental illness, until March 17th, 2024.
Oh, okay. So they don't know about the mental health thing.
Yes. Advanced irreversible decline in capability and an enduring intolerable suffering that cannot be alleviated under acceptable conditions. So that's the eligibility to apply for it.
But once again, that doesn't mean that the individual is terminally ill.
Correct.
So somebody could be, having a severe case of diabetes, they had to get their leg amputated, and now their other leg might be amputated, and
it could also, yes.
And they're just getting worse and worse.
Way of living.
Yeah.
It's deteriorating.
And again, who determines what is a happy way or not a happy way, and where do you draw the line?
Well, the eligibility was updated as of 2021, but they are in the process of having to update it again because of the revision of having long-term mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, because, so imagine if you are an individual that has some kind of a physical disability, whether it's because of, like I said, diabetes, for example, do you need to go full on rage and have these episodes, and then from there that gets documented, and now you're open the door open? I mean,
yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out if okay, so you've got a physical ailment. You then go see a doctor, and the doctor's like, no, you're not terminally ill. You're not going to die, but I know you're in pain. Here's some pills, and you're going to deal with it as you go along. And this person's like, no, I don't want to live anymore. I've lost both my legs because of diabetes, and I don't want to continue. I hate my standard of life and blah, blah. And the doctor's like, no, we think you're okay. So does that person need to have like some severe episodes of getting, being abusive and so on and so forth, right? So it's, you know what I mean? Like, and now all of a sudden the person's going to do that
to kind of enforce it to get what they want, right?
Yeah.
They do have procedural safeguards. So, for example, they have like what they call a 2-track approach based on whether natural death is reasonably foreseeable.
So, I mean, who decides? Is there like a panel of people?
Yeah, like, is it a doctor or is it like
your healthcare practitioner? But what is the scariest part? And actually,
one person who decides the fate of your future. You can be having a mental state, and then all of a sudden you want to die, and now
it's not like instant. You're right. It's not like, oh, I feel like I want to die today and I'm going to go apply. No, you have to have a long-standing history.
There's got to be a long process.
It is a long process. Don't get me twisted. It's not like you can just be like, hey, I want to die. There's okay, I want to die. And if, like you were saying, they said, okay, well, we can try other things. And if you're still adamant after trying all those things, they put you under what's called a 90-day assessment. And it's through rigorous treatment under certain conditions that they do it to make sure that you actually want to do this. So they do have safeguards in place. So like they do have, for those whose natural death is not reasonably foreseeable, additional requirements include expert consultations under specific conditions and a 90-day assessment period. So they do have safeguards in place so people aren't trying to just say, hey, but you have to have like a long-standing history. So if you're committing suicide all the time and you're saying like, I'm fully depressed, here's how many times have I been in and out of the hospital? Yeah. Either I'm going to do it to myself or you're going to do it. As long as you can prove that medical history and there's long withstanding, that's what people want. They want.
So I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this. I mean, I've got my own view on it, but I'd rather hear everyone else's thoughts on it. First of all, I do understand the one about someone who's got a critical illness, right? So the doctor said, unfortunately, you got 3 months left, and the person's obviously in a great deal of pain. They're suffering immensely. We'll never know how much they're suffering. And then you've got their family, and their immediate, loved ones who are also suffering now because of this, right? To be able to watch someone deteriorate that much, it is going to have an effect on you. But now we're kind of getting into this gray area where you've got individuals that are not terminally ill. They are suffering, whether it has to do with some kind of a disease that they may have, whether it has to do with the fact that they had a horrific accident or whatever at work or wherever they were. And now their quality of life has drastically dropped, where they need assistance to go to the bathroom. They can't even get dressed on their own. They can't feed themselves. But their mind is fully functional. Like they said, they have to be able to make a decision. So they're not talking about somebody in a vegetation state here. So to be able to get into that person's mind and to be able to judge them and say, well, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. You should just live, and that's what God intended, or whatever, or deal with whatever it is that you're going through. That's the other side of it. But I want to kind of hear everyone's opinion on what they think. I'm going to start on this side here with Melissa. So we're not talking about, I do want your opinion on the part about if someone's terminally ill. So let's say if a loved one that that they've got 3 months to live because they've got, a severe case of cancer, and the doctor, and they're really suffering. Do you agree that it should be up to that individual, if they are of sane mind, to say, you know what, I'm not waiting 6 months. I don't want to get to that point where I can, I'm like in so much pain, and my family sees me deteriorate to the point they can't even recognize me. My hair is going to fall out. I'm going through chemo and whatever else. Do you feel that person has the human right to say that I want my life to be terminated earlier?
I never really know how to answer this question because I remember last time we actually kind of spoke something about this and I had an answer, but then we talked a little further into it and now I don't know how to answer it. At first, I would say if they're a sane mind and that's what they want, then I would support it. Because granted, knowing how much pain they could be suffering, like they just can't bear it no more. But if they weren't of a sane mind, I feel like there should be a process of looking through their history and their caregivers or whoever's closest to them to determine that decision. But after we had talked a little more about it, knowing that things can potentially, like there's those miracle moments, be overcome, that's a tough answer to give. Like,
So when it comes to people who are terminally ill, you do agree that they should be able to kind of make that decision if they want to pull the plug earlier.
if you're looking for a straightforward answer, I mean, I guess I'd say yes, but I don't know if I'm going to be solid with that answer because my mind still thinks like, what if they can overcome magically, miraculously, like people like with cancer, most people unfortunately die. And aren't able to, depending on the stage of cancer, right? And then there's the magical moments where, wow, this person actually has a success story. So I'm really bad at answering this kind of stuff.
Kind of like pulling the plug on someone who's in a coma, but then to find out they could have woken up a week later.
Exactly.
Not a week later, like,
Yeah.
10 years or
But
15 years later,
whatever
right?
amount of time later, late, right?
So you're saying that if someone is terminally ill, that you still are on the fence on whether or not that person should be allowed to say, I want to schedule a date and, check out sooner.
Maybe there should be a difficult process, I think, to determine if that is truly what they want.
Mm-hmm.
If that seems
Well, I mean,
reasonable.
so what kind of process would that be if that's what they truly want? I mean, if they're saying it, what more is needed to be said? If the person's saying, the doctors told me I got 3 months. I've done chemo for 5 years. My body's deteriorating. I'm sick and tired of the crap I put my family through. I'm not going to get any better. I'm done. I know I'm going to die. I'd rather just die now gracefully, where I'm actually still coherent and I can spend quality time with my family and plan a day, and then kind of be done. So but what you're basically saying is that there might be still
There's a little hope, a little faith.
Okay. I agree with what you're saying.
mean,
I
okay.
get what you're saying. I get
agree
it.
with
I
that.
totally get it. Okay.
I must be cold then because I just think that I would just be like,
So-
if you want to go, then go.
Let's move on
I'm
now
that way
to
The
too.
world
Yeah.
just has so many people.